Maybe we should put some like nice soothing music. Or you're gonna get a copyright infringement from YouTube.
There we go. We are now live on YouTube.
Sweet.
Pretty awesome. So we're gonna get ready to get started. Good afternoon, everybody who joined. Carmen and Miranda. We're just giving it a couple minutes for everybody else to join in. Yeah.
I find that if you don't move for a long enough time, people think you just thumbnail on.
All right, Betty, you want to kick it off?
Sure. One second. Am I set?
You're
We're
all
good.
good.
Let's go.
I'm good. Hi, everybody. This is Betty Diaz on behalf of Omega Phi Beta Foundation and the Growth and Goals Mindset and Why Not Care. We're excited to welcome you to this topic of all about mechanical engineering. And it is my pleasure to introduce my friends of over 15 years, I believe, Josip Golja, a senior mechanical engineer. Kick
All
it off,
right. Hi.
Joe.
Thanks for the nice intro, Betty. Since we have so far only two people, I'm going to open it up for them to talk a little, tell me a little about themselves so I can pinpoint it to them at the moment. So if Carmen and Miranda don't mind unmuting for a second and just give me a little about you, and I'll try to direct any of the questions to you while I'm going, through my stuff. Or not.
Sorry, I had to go to a different room because there's noise in the background. So yeah, I am also part of the Omega Phi Beta Foundation, newly appointed member. And I'm an artist. I am a parent coordinator. I have two jobs and I try to keep busy.
Gotcha. Okay. And you're interested in mechanical engineering just to find out what we guys do, or lady, men, and women?
Definitely.
Right. Okay. So I will start going through the slides and just give a general review. So once again, we're talking about mechanical engineering. And now I'll give you a little bit of myself. Like Betty told you, I'm Josip Golja. I was born in this in a family who I'm a first generation in this country, so it's not like I had it easy like some people who might be here for a couple of generations. My father's from Croatia, my mother is from El Salvador, so there was a little bit of a language barrier at the beginning for me learning English because they would speak a little bit of everything, and I'd be a little confused as a child. That being said, I got a very good upbringing in the sense that I was multicultural and I got to understand viewpoints from many different perspectives. In terms of schooling, I have 3 degrees. I have a bachelor's degree in physics, a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and a master's degree in mechanical engineering. I did a 5-year program for my undergraduate degree. I got in 3 years, I got my physics, and in 2 years, I got my mechanical engineering. I did an extra year and a half to get my master's degree. And for the past 20 years, give or take, I've been working as a mechanical engineer. And in many varied fields. So I'm going to be talking about that during this presentation, so that you have an idea of the many different career paths you can take with just one education major. All right. So what exactly is mechanical engineering? Well, first let's talk about the schooling you need. You would have to be very good in the STEM or STEAM, depending on who you ask nowadays. Science, technology, engineering, architectural, and mathematics. So as long as you're good or you're interested in those fields, you would be a great fit for this. If you are not into those fields, I highly recommend you choose something else, because you're going to be looking at something you don't like for a very long time. You would start, the best time to find out if you like engineering is during high school. High school, they give you a little taste of everything. If you're good at math, if you're good at the physics classes, and you're good at, and you like going to like shop classes and using your hands and using your mind to solve problems, that's when you might figure out that I might have the bug of having a mechanical engineering mindset. And trade-wise, you have many possibilities. So like I said, you can graduate with mechanical engineering as your major, right? As a mechanical engineer, you have a plethora. Like you're not limited to one thing. Like, let's say if you become an accountant and you major in accounting, you're gonna be an accountant. There are some offsets to that. Like there's little specialties in those fields, but you're pretty much doing what you learned in school in that narrow band field. With mechanical engineering, you have the option of teaching, you have the option of being a contractor, you have the option of being a consultant, manager. Many things are offered to you, and I'm going to be talking about a couple of. I had about 5 or 6 different jobs in the trade, so I can give personal experience on some of those things that you could do. And we'll go into that as what we're talking about professionally. So mechanical engineering and education. My first job that I got paid for and I had to pay taxes for was when I was a teacher's assistant in college. And as a teacher's assistant, I had experience as grading papers, viewing, observing laboratory classes, and making sure everybody was doing things the same, grading papers, grading homework, supervising classes, and things of that nature. So one of the first things you could do as a mechanical engineer, and you would be very attuned to it because you've been in school all your life, so you exactly how that thing would, what it would entail, you could become in the education field. So I on the bullet points a couple of examples of things that you can do. The first one is grammar school teacher. Now, I only put that there just because it is an option. You need a master's degree to become a grammar school teacher, I believe, nowadays in New York City. But I wouldn't spend the time with the high mathematics and the physics and all that stuff just to teach, kids how to do 3 times 3. So it's an option, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's the best option with all the time and effort and money that you spent. A little bit of a better option would be a high school teacher. And a high school teacher, this is when you can guide the children that you're teaching, to give them an idea of what adult life and what they can put the knowledge that they were learning to the test in real life. I wouldn't recommend going straight out of college to do any of these teacher jobs. I always find that if you work in the field, it is always better that you have real world experience and you bring that as a teacher to the children, because they always have questions like, if you never left the school system, you went to school 16 years of your life, up until college, and then you teach in school, you don't know anything really outside of school. So it's always good to have a fresh opinion on that. On top of that, you can also be a lab and shop teacher. I have a couple of friends who graduated, and they're very happy in the labs. They work with their hands, and they teach kids how to do things physically, use tools and things of that nature. Um, One of the things but not the last thing, is being a university or college professor. The stipulation of that is for the most universities and college professors, they require you to have a PhD. And a PhD is a lot more time in school, is an extra 4 years after your master's. And I don't know, for me, it doesn't seem like it would pay off financially, but if you really enjoy teaching and you want to have tenure and things of that nature, you can go into university, college professor. And then finally, after going through one of those 3 or 4 things in the top of those bullet points, you can become a department head or a principal. So that's more of a managerial role, and that you get that after putting your work in for about 5 or 6 years. Okay, next we have mechanical engineering and construction. My second job, but my first job out of college, was as a construction engineer. Now, to be a construction engineer, I like to compare it to being a babysitter for adults. And I say that with love, but it's also annoyance, because you know, when you babysit kids, you know that they haven't learned all the social norms, and they will learn eventually to be better. You assume adults would know better, but apparently they don't. So that's why it's babysitting them. So what do you need to do in the construction field? So you would have to be a detail-oriented person. You have to make sure that you take in my previous job as a construction engineer, you would have to take detailed notes throughout the day, and you would have a logbook of conversations you had, phone calls, and things of that nature, just so that you could have record and you can go back to it. You would have to handle multiple tasks, often all at the same time, which, if you're not good with stress, that's probably not a good idea. And one of the most important things that you wouldn't think as an engineer, because if you watch any of the social media or TVs, they always show engineers kind of being the geek, put the glasses up, and they can't speak too well. That's the worst engineer, because the best engineers are able to communicate clearly and be able to show what they're thinking and convey it to you in either word or in written form. So no matter what you do in life, one of the highest and most important skills that you can have is communication. So without that, I don't care what profession you're in, if you can't communicate your ideas to other people, or if you can't present yourself well in an interview, it doesn't mean anything, right? Doesn't mean if you have straight A's in school, or if you have a great reference letter. If you cannot be personable and talk to other people, you're going to have a hard time. You can handle high stress, and I will say this: mechanical engineering is a high stress job for most people. They have to deal with not only their coworkers, they have to deal with a whole bunch of other people, such as the owners of the project, the construction managers, the architects, the everybody else. You have to be able to communicate with them, and they're not always happy, and you have to try to solve the problems that are happening. And one of the nice things about the construction field is that you have an option for having office life, which is a 9 to 5, basically behind a desk and a computer doing calculations, or you can do a field life where you're in the field of a construction site, and you get to see the sun, which is nice every now and then, and see things being built right in front of your hands or your eyes. And then we have mechanical engineering in the MEP, fire protection, and consultant field. And anybody who's very diligent might notice that I have the exact same slide as the previous one. It's not because I'm lazy. It's just to prove a point that, as an engineer, you want to be as efficient as possible, and all the skills are pretty much the same that you need, no matter what job you have. But what an actual mechanical engineer in MEP, which stands for mechanical, electrical, plumbing / fire protection, does is that the mechanical part makes sure that you are comfortable inside your space, living space, hospital space, any building that you're in. The temperature that you feel, if you ever feel very cold, women often feel very cold in spots, men often feel very hot. It's the difference between genetics, basically. Girls are usually more cold than guys are usually more hot than girls are. So we have to balance that with calculations to make sure that most people are happy. You will never get everybody happy, but most people are happy. Plumbing is plumbing people don't get as much credit as they should. It's kind of like the hierarchy is mechanical, then electrical, then plumbing. Without plumbing, you would not have sanitary water for drinking. You wouldn't have toilets for flushing. You wouldn't have water for taking showers or water for gardening, watering your garden. So it's very important, but it's not the most glamorous, but they're equally important. And you can all do these multiple mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection with a mechanical engineering degree. But with the exception of electrical, you technically should be an electrical engineer at that point. So that's a couple of the jobs that I have done. And right now I'm going to open it up to questions, anything that you guys wanted to know specifically, because I don't want to bore you with my life history, So anybody has a question, I'm willing to take it.
Hi, Joe. This is Akila. How are you?
Hello, Akila. How are you?
I'm good. I have a question. So you talked a little bit about the jobs that you've had, and I'm just curious, kind of what drew you to want to become a mechanical engineer? And can you tell us about one of the projects that you've worked on and what you enjoyed about it?
Sure. That's a very good question. To be honest, when I was in high school, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I first thought I was going to be a psychologist. Then my school luckily had a program where they asked the children what they're thinking of being a professional in life, what their career choices were. And they brought in a psychologist because of me. And the psychologist bored me to death. And I said I couldn't work that. So I changed my mind. And I realized I was good at math and I was good at science. So I said, engineering sounds pretty good. Back in the old days, they were like, doctor, lawyer, engineer was like the trifecta of the good profession. So I said, let me give engineering a try. It's not easy, I'll say as much. It's a very tough field to get into if you're don't have those traits that are on the screen right now, detail oriented and whatnot. But that's how I came into mechanical engineering. I wish that there was something like this presentation when I was going back in my day, as the old people say, 20 years ago, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have Zoom, no YouTube. So you couldn't really, unless you knew somebody who was an engineer, you didn't know exactly what it is. And I think Betty could tell you, we've been friends for 15 years. She has no idea what I do. And one of the projects that I'm most proud of, I have two projects to answer Akila's question. One of my first jobs as a mechanical engineer in the HVAC field. I was doing a laboratory in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, Penn State University, we did a BSL-3 laboratory that had, they were doing experiments with mice, they were doing biological experiments, and it's very detailed, and we successfully did it. I had to do a couple of really long nighters, but I was very proud at the end of that it was done, and it was done correctly. More recently, I've done, if you guys are from New York, I don't know if people are in California or whatnot, but if you guys are in New York, I finished about 2 or 3 years ago the Riverside projects. So by 59th Street and 12th Avenue, right by the water, there are Riverside building 1 through 5, and I did work on 3 or 4 of the 5 buildings that were there. So it's a high-end residential condos, and as well as affordable living. Very beautiful, very, very nice places to live. and very challenging. So those are the projects that I remember. I also see that Carmen has written something. What's the day in the life? Can you share what a day in the life of is now? Sure. I believe you're saying, well, what's a typical day? So if you look behind me in my background, I'm not actually at work, but this is what my work looks like. As you can see, I have my desk has boxes. I have books behind me. A typical day goes as such. You get up, you get into the office, you have your coffee because that's the most important thing of the day, because otherwise you'll fall asleep. After you do that, you check your emails. First thing you have to do is check for any emergencies. And a typical day, you can have, depending on who you are. I'm a manager in my current role. You have to check for what we call fires, and fires are any emergencies that have to be put out right away. So, on a good day, you have none of those, but on typical days, you have like 3 or 4 fires that you have to put out. So you have to make sure that you see what the problem is and find the best way to mitigate that problem, and or get your team to help you in fixing it. Because as a manager, you don't necessarily do the work yourself, but you have to know who is in charge of that work and make sure that they mitigate the risk. After you check your emails and get rid of those fires, then you have to do any of the daily tasks. I recommend for most people to have a log, just a piece of paper that have certain tasks that you have numbered 1 through whatever that may be, and just go through the list, try to prioritize it to make sure that you're doing the things that are due more closer to the time frame that you need to finish. And then that's pretty much it. You do a lot of calculations, reviewing of the documents of other people's work for clarity. You would think that a lot of people in this field that I'm in now is producing drawings, engineering drawings. So as a manager, I don't necessarily check at the moment for technical data. I'm checking for completeness, kind of dotting the T's, dotting the I's, and everything like that. OPB Foundation. Okay, here's another question by OPB Foundation. What was the most horrible fire you had to put out? If you can tell us, and the most challenging part of your work. Oh, in terms of fires, they're not actual fires. We're not firefighters. It's a term that we use because it's something that is hot, pressing, and has to be taken care of immediately. That's a figure of speech. So one of the most horrible fires that I can remember was, and I won't mention names and things like that, so that there's no problems, but in one of the high-rise buildings we were working on, there was a radiator, right? We designed not the actual radiator, but we design where they should be placed to make sure everybody's comfortable and have the maximum amount of heating. Now, the problem is we gave some constraints to the architect because they were going to put the radiator inside of a enclosure. And you guys know what radiators look like. If you don't, in schools, there's the old cast iron ones on the side that have water or oil or whatever to go through. They look kind of ugly, and because of that, many architects don't want them, so they put them inside of a box of some sort that makes it look nicer. So we gave the constraints. You can't have the boxes too close to the heating element because that can cause a literal fire. Carmen, this is the one time that the fire means real fire. If the wood or whatever the material is too close to the heating element, there's a chance that it can catch on fire and burn the entire building. So we gave those details to the architect. They took liberties on how they were going to interpret those dimensions. And at the end of the day, it wasn't exactly what we said. We didn't double check. And we had to design the solution after they've already bought everything. So that's a couple of $1 million mistake that, nobody's proud of, but those are things that happen. The best way to do it is to acknowledge what happened. You have to go through all of your emails and backtrack to find out what exactly happened. And then you would have to find a way to fix it. Sometimes is just re-engineer the quick answer is the architect had to re-engineer the enclosure, right, per our specifications. But they said that we accepted it without checking it. So that's where the problem lays. And then it's a he said, she said, or they said, you said kind of deal. So that's where the communication skills and being detail oriented saved us, because if you kept all your emails and you organize it, you're able to prove that no, we gave you these stipulations, constraints, you didn't follow them, and we approved something on the contingency that they were following that. And once we were able to prove that, we didn't have to pay millions of dollars as a company, not you personally. The company would have to pay for that. All right. OPB Foundation has another question. They said, you talked about communication skills and math skills. Mechanical engineers can transition to PR or accountants. PR, yes. I don't know about accounting, if they can necessarily transition. I know for accounting, they prefer CPAs, and if the mechanical engineer can pass those CPA exams, I'm sure that then they would be. The math, we take much higher level math than accountants. Calculus 1, 2, 3, and 4, university level calculus. So we do know how to do high level math, but we don't necessarily have the financial knowledge of accountants. But PR, I mean, you could do any of those things. Okay, Carmen has a question. Carmen is asking, are these residential and commercial spaces you manage contracts? No, we are contracted by usually the owner or the architect who are building these properties. We're not managing the spaces. Those are what are they called? Residential managers. Those different people. You don't need to be an engineer necessarily to be a residential manager, but building engineers should be engineers. Any other questions? Anything you've always wanted to know, even if it might not be engineering?
So
Sorry,
we got
go
ahead. Can you give us an example of mechanical engineering in a Marvel movie?
Sure. You know Tony Stark? He does mechanical engineering as well as electrical engineering. The very first Iron Man suit that he built in Iron Man is a marvel of mechanical engineering. He took materials that were available to him. He saw that he needed to solve a problem, escape the place. He saw that they had something that would stop them, such as bullets. So he had to be able to build something to protect him from the bullets. So he made a suit out of the metal that he had around. He created a power system, which is electrical engineering, but we'll let that go. He did the arc reactor, and he made a moving mechanical piece of equipment to save his life. That is the ideal goal of any mechanical engineer. We don't necessarily save lives per se, depending on who it is. Fire protection engineers definitely save lives because they do sprinkler systems and things of that nature. But we definitely try to make the world a better place. Do you get discounts on any project you work on? I wish. When I was on that high-end residential project, I would have loved to have one of those penthouse places. Unfortunately, they cost about 1.4 to 1.6 million, and it's a little out of my price range at the moment. So not necessarily. We don't get any pro bonos.
Sure. This
But
is
we do
Akila.
go to. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask another question. This is Akila. Can you talk a little bit about the hours requirements and just what the process entails for you to sit for the exam, and like what the licensing requirements are?
Sure.
To become an engineer.
So the hours, I'm going to talk about, I could take that a couple of ways. I'm going to answer it 3 ways that I think you might mean. First, in terms of schooling, to be an engineer, you would have to obviously finish high school first, get accepted into a college that has an engineering degree, and you can do a couple of things. You can become you can get an associate's degree, which takes about 2 years, right? The next level up is to get a bachelor's degree. That's a 4-year degree. And then master's degree on top of that is typically 2 years. So that's timing on that part. You can become a professional engineer, right? You cannot call yourself a professional engineer just because you finished school. You have to take a test. It's an 8-hour test with a 1-hour break in between. So it's 9 hours plus 2 hours travel, usually to and from. So it's about 12 hours in the day that you have to spend doing a test. It's brutal. It takes a long time. But after you take that test, and assuming you pass, you get to be called a professional engineer in the state that you took it. And at that point, that allows you to sign and seal drawings, which is basically a seal of approval, which you get more money for being able to do that. However, the problem is that if anything goes wrong, you get sued. So double-edged sword, risk reward kind of thing. And what else time-wise? A project can last anywhere from a month, right? From start to finish. But the projects that I usually work on are multi-million or 100,000 square feet projects, and they usually last anywhere from 2 to 3 years. I don't know if that answered all your questions, Akila.
Yes, thank you. That was helpful.
No problem. And somebody else, I believe, was going to say something.
Hey, Joe, we got another good question. If you had all the resources and, financially, team-wise, what would be the job you would do right now?
I prefer to be an owner's representative, which is not something I put on the slides before, but what that is, you don't necessarily have to be a mechanical engineer for that. That is kind of a supreme managerial job. An owner's rep, basically somebody is the owner, right? And you represent them. They usually have millions of dollars, and they're the ones putting up these really high residential places, office buildings, things of that nature. And you have to tell other people what to do. And you yell at them all the time, which is not a good one doesn't yell at them all the time, but you kind of light the fire under their buttocks to get things done. And it's better to tell people what to do than to get yelled at. Remember, they're not supposed to yell when they're telling you to do stuff. So they get paid pretty well, and sometimes they take architects instead of engineers as owners' representatives. But that is an option. That's a dream job that similar to what I'm doing, honestly, right now. But that's that. I see another question on the chat. What best advice you receive as a man? What's the best advice you received as a mechanical engineer? So you don't necessarily go into mechanical engineering thinking you're going to be rich, right? Remember we were talking before about doctor, lawyer, engineer. You would think in that grouping, doctors obviously make very good money, lawyers make very good money. But it's kind of based on the amount of time you put in. Same thing with engineering. So it's not a 9-to-5 kind of job, unfortunately, for a lot of people. When you're starting out, you're going to have to work a lot of overtime. Some people work 40 hours a week. Some people work 60 hours a week, and some people work hours a week. It really depends. And you get decent pay. So out of college, I think nowadays in this time, you can start off with 60,000. That might be a little bit low because I haven't started out of college in about 20 years, but let's say $60,000 is not a bad place to start if you're coming out of college. But you won't be rich necessarily. I mean, you're not going to be making $500,000 a year. High-end engineers at the top of their game, 30 years experience, can make anywhere, I don't know, $200,000, right? I'm not there yet. Anyone else?
I have one other question. This is Akila. Let's say you wanted to start your own like mechanical engineering firm. Like, how do you have like a concept of like what that process would look like? Would it be like would you be able to start with like a one-person shop? Would you require other people? Like, how would you start that?
It's interesting you asked that. I have a couple of friends who actually did start their own business. So first of all, you can start slow. To do one, let's say we're talking about mechanical engineering, MEP, fire protection, right? You would need at least one person each, unless you know how to do. Me personally, I can do mechanical and I can do plumbing and fire protection. So I could do 3 of the 4 trades by myself. The problem is when people say that everything is due in 1 week and it takes 1 week to do one trade, me by myself doing would not necessarily, I would have to work a lot of hours to get that done, right? In that short amount of time. So it's always better to have one person per trade on a team. In terms of how you would do it, you would basically take jobs that no other big firms would take, right? Usually I work in big firms. We do many thousands of square feet. You would take jobs that are hundreds of feet, right? Little boutique shops, small homes, and things of that nature. And you would start small, get a reputation, see, organize, because it's not just doing the work. You have to have also the tools to do that. And the tools would be programs. And the programs, unfortunately, now are an exorbitant amount of price. For one license, for one program is usually around $2,000. So $2,000 times 4 other people, you're in the multi-thousand, $8,000 just for the software. And then you have to buy the computers. The computers are $2,000 usually, right? Because you're going to need high-end computers to do the work, because you're drawing now in 3D. Most people are doing 3D now. They don't want to do 2D. So those are the things you have to consider: the equipment, the software, the people, and the clients. So one of the things about having clients is you can't just have one and then finish the job and then look for another one and then finish the job. You kind of have to juggle multiple projects at once, because you need to pay bills, right? You need to have finances available. Bills are monthly, not whenever you feel like paying them. I don't know if that answered your question, Akila.
Yeah, no, that definitely a good perspective on that. And then I guess with regards to your continuing education, is that something that you actively continue to do? Like, how do you keep up with like what's hot and new in the industry?
Oh, excellent question, actually. So you should, in the companies, they provide something called lunch and learns, which is aimed at having everybody gets provided a lunch. You sit down in a conference room, and a vendor usually describes products and or new technologies that are coming out. So you're always aware of the new things that are coming out. That's without doing any tracking, right? But once you become a professional engineer that we talked about before, with that 12-hour test or 8-hour test, and 12 hours total, you have to do a certain amount of continuing education credits. So I believe it's 30 per year. So you have to do 30 hours of continuing education and have it tracked and recorded so that you can keep the license. If you don't do that, your license lapses, and then you have to take the test again. So most engineers get the continuing education through lunch and learns. They can also go to, they have day trips to certain places where they will teach you. And sometimes the best ones are free, in my opinion, but you can also pay for them. I'm not a big fan of paying for more education credits if I can get them for free. There's also something called a lead credential, and the lead credential is LEED. I forgot what it stands for, Leaders in Environmental Engineering something. They also require you, it's a 2-part test, I believe 4 hours each. not on the same day, but you could take it in the same day. And that requires continuing education as well. Betty, do you have anything that you want to ask since you don't know what I do, remember? Thank you, Carmen. What would be the top skill that most companies look for in an engineer? This is Betty. Hey, Betty. Top skill, really, when the first thing that they see is your resume. So the communication skill of writing is the first thing that gets their eye. And I've been told that a lot of people have pretty crappy looking resumes. So I would say that the first skill that you have to learn is how to properly make a resume attractive while showing all the work experience you have. Now, I know people who are just coming out of school don't have work experience, so you would be putting your classes you took, your GPA, and things of that nature. However, after you have your first job, all that stuff is kind of on the back burner, and the most important things are the projects that you worked on. It's all about experience from that point. So grades are great when you're in school, but and your first job, but after that, nobody asks what your GPA is. I leave it on my resume just in case, but you know. So the top skill would be communication, both written and then when you have the interview, actual interview in person, talking, communication skills, confidence, know what you're talking about.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Betty. We got another good question. If you're interviewing somebody tomorrow, right? They come into the interview. What are the top 3 points that they should focus on when they're coming into interview?
Okay, top 3 points: be on time, be presentable, and be well spoken. Those are the very top things. As we all know, you don't judge a book by its cover, but a lot of people do. So if you come in looking dirty, haggard, unkempt, people judge you, whether you like it or not, whether society tells you to or not. That's a fact of life. So we have a question from Carmen that says, communication can be challenging during virtual times. What do you recommend? So basically, I have been fortunate that I don't have to look for a job during this pandemic, but a lot of job interviews now are virtual through Zoom. So the same way we're communicating now, you would have, if you're doing an interview on Zoom, you would have obviously your camera open so they can see you. It's kind of respectful so that both of you see each other. You talk to one another. You don't have something in the background that's, I don't know if you guys heard about the lawyer who was a cat on his video during a trial. You generally don't want to do that. Sure, it's funny, but they're not looking for comedians. They're looking for engineers. OPB Foundation. Give us your elevator pitch. If you had to describe what you do to someone who doesn't know anything about engineering, what would you say? Basically, if you had to tell a 5-year-old what you do, how would you describe it? Iron Man? No, I don't want to lie to the kid because I'm not making Iron Man things. But what I would say is that my job is to see a problem and find out ways to fix it. That's the simplest way to describe it. And my problems are specifically in the mechanical, plumbing, and fire protection fields. So we're problem solvers. That's the elevator pitch for the 5-year-old. We fix things, make things work. Anybody else?
Nice. So, how would mechanical engineering apply to someone who wants to go to the military? Like, what could be some of the interests they can look for while they, are in boot camp and they want to get into mechanical engineering? I want to stay within the armed forces.
Okay, that's an interesting question. In terms of armed forces, you can do ROTC in college, and they will pay if you dedicate a certain portion of your life to the military in terms of years of service, they will pay for your education, and you can serve the country at the same time as getting a very good education, and you would be a mechanical engineer in the Army.
So, what are your favorite TV shows right now?
I don't watch that many TV shows, to be honest. I watch YouTube mostly. But if I had to say the most recent TV show that I've watched was Rick and Morty, because I'm a geek and I like sarcasm.
How does Rick apply mechanical engineering to their time machine?
He's a scientist. He's very smart. He uses all the tools available to him, such as time travel and wormhole portals, which I don't have access to. I'm not as smart as he is.
Are there any movies out there that are out now besides like Iron Man that you could say that is a great example of mechanical engineering? If you're looking to see something that's close to working in the field, check out that movie and you'll get a good idea.
So it's not a new movie. I recently watched The Martian with Matt Damon. Now, he was not necessarily a mechanical engineer. I believe he was a botanist, but the way he approached I don't know if any of you watched it or not, but the way he approached all the problems he had, I don't want to ruin the movie for anybody if anybody didn't watch it, but basically he got stuck on Mars. His team left him by mistake, and he had to figure out how to survive long enough before they sent a rescue crew to him. And he did many, many things that is what an engineer would do. Take basic principles that you know and survive. So that's I think that the best movie I've seen recently of engineering principles done by a non-engineer.
After watching that movie, because it was a great movie, do you think that is
Right.
actually possible? Do you think that's something that can actually happen in real life?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was definitely, they had a lot of scientists. I watched a documentary on it. They had a lot of scientists' information on it, so they tried to make it as real as possible. Everything except for the last part when he was kind of flying through space with the hole in his suit, I think mostly happened. All right, I have so many other questions. Let's see, elevator pitch, rear. So are there any rare, so there are rarely, since you're all problems. No, there are constantly conflicts in engineering. We're problem solvers because there's a never-ending stream of problems. And when you solve one problem, you probably have another one on the way. Sounds like the show 100, Raven was an engineer. I did not watch the show 100. Did you mentor high school students? Yes and no. Not in the traditional mentor sense. I never was part of a program, but there were children or colleagues, I guess peers at that time, that I did help. We had study groups and things of that nature. So I did mentor high school students when I was in high school, and I did some mentoring to students when I was in the working world. I highly recommend doing it. It's very fulfilling to see somebody and help mold their life. Unless you have kids of your own, and then you know what that's like anyway.
Have you ever been someplace and just thought to yourself, like we'll go local, right? New York. Is there anything in New York that is a masterfully mechanical engineer piece that you would recommend everybody to go check out in their lifetime? Maybe like top 5 locations.
Top 5 locations for mechanical engineers. So the problem with a lot of the stuff that is actually mechanical engineering, you don't want children to be there because they can die. The neighbors, they're not like comfortable spots. But and this also goes for the OPB Foundation question for children. I highly recommend the Hall of Science. I love that place as a child, and I still love it. Like it's embarrassing, but I put some of the kids to shame over there because I still play with all the stuff, and they're like, give me a turn, and I'm like, no, I'm here first. I'm bigger than you. So yeah, you should go to the Hall of Science. I don't have
Nice.
many.
Have you ever been to the Liberty Science Center in Jersey?
I have not. No. Is it good?
Oh,
You recommend?
yes, it's amazing. So everybody else on the line, if you're looking to do things with the kids, that place is absolutely amazing. I don't know how hands-on it is at the moment, but prior to COVID, it was like one of those places where you'll get stuck in one area for an hour. So,
Mhm.
and they have a lot of things pertaining to science and all the amazing stuff. So I highly recommend that place. So, anybody have any other questions while we're here?
To give you one more place, since you did ask, and I just realized that
Oh,
it's a very
nice.
good place. Any carnival and or Six Flags, everything there uses mechanical engineering. The roller coasters, the elevators, the drops, all of that takes physics and mechanical engineering to enjoy. And you go there to enjoy it, but you can think about, oh, how did they go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds? That's with electromagnets and things of that nature. So the funnest place that you can bring someone besides the science centers is like Six Flags, and be like, these are you have to do some research on your own, but this is how the roller coaster works, or this is how the pendulum works, or things of that nature. OPB Foundation asks, what about activities at home? What activities at home can we do with children that show it is engineering subject? You got it. Legos and clay. I loved Legos as a child, and I think that's what made me become an engineer eventually. I like to build things. I like to solve things. Following instructions. Apparently, some kids don't like to look at the instructions and try to build it from the picture. I don't recommend it. You follow the instructions, you'll get it exactly like the picture. So those are the things that, and I think video games, to be quite honest, as long as they're not too violent or whatnot, they do teach critical thinking skills because you have to solve puzzles in them. Yep, Betty, I'm sure your son's an engineer. We can start him on the right path.
Absolutely. I think Minecraft is one of those games that falls into that category. It was all about building and problem solving.
Exactly. So if no
All
one
right.
else has
So
any other, yep.
exactly. That's exactly where I was going. Do you have any key terms or something of a personal quote or anything you want to leave us with, and where people can find you if they would like to maybe contact you to ask more questions?
Um, I, in terms of contacting me, I believe they could reach out to you guys. They have your contact information, and you can forward it to me because you have my contact information.
Perfect.
The only thing I want to leave to you guys is that mechanical engineering is not for everyone, but it's always good to know a little bit about everything. So even if you're not necessarily interested in mechanical engineering, it's always good to know what they do, as well as many other careers, because the more information you have, the better in life you'll be able to have opinions and construct your own thoughts and ideas.
Amazing. Thank you, Joseph, for coming by today. Super appreciated.
Mhm.
Don't forget, guys, click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when we have new videos for everyone. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach us at the Omega Phi Beta Foundation, or you can visit growthandgoals.com and let us know your thoughts. Also, next Saturday, don't forget, every Saturday of the month is a STEAM learning. So next week we have content creation 101 with Brianna. So you want to be here next week, April 10th from 1 to 2. Another great creation, a great collaboration with Omega Phi Beta and the Growth and Goals mindset. And Brianna's gonna, she has her own company as well. So she's gonna teach you how to, create content and also build your own entity as you go. So it's something you definitely want to join. If you have a business, you have a brand, and you want to learn how to put out marketing materials or anything of that nature, or just market yourself or the job you're at, and show your boss that, hey, I'm pretty awesome outside of what I regularly do too. Definitely come and check in with us. We'll be here next Saturday. So looking forward, everybody. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.